Hello, and welcome to this 19th video in a series of reflections on the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 16, verses 1, 2, and 3, which are sometimes called the godly qualities. If you haven't already, I suggest you take a look at the introductory video to this series. It gives you a bit of information on what's being done here, why I'm doing it, and kind of how I'm going about this. It saves me from repeating it at the front of each of these videos. They're pretty lengthy as it is, and there's just no need to add another 5 or 6 minutes onto the front of each of them. Now, if you've watched any of these videos before, you're aware that one of the things that we do is try to kind of come to this as a separate activity, a little bit cleansed of the day's cares and rushing around and worries. And I do that with a simple exercise learned at the School of Practical Philosophy. These days there's apps on your phone and places that you could go that would teach you a similar exercise. But the general gist is that we are not fully charging in from one activity to the next, and you kind of miss a lot of what's going on because you haven't finished the activity before. So with that, in whatever way that you practice, or just simply following along with these instructions, we try to close your eyes and be aware of where you are, in my case sitting here in a chair, and just let everything go. There's just nothing to do. There's nowhere to go, and just come to rest. Good. Now, to do this properly would require at least 2 or 3 minutes, because again we bring so much force to every activity that 2 or 3 minutes would in fact be a good starting point for this. However, as I've said before, it just doesn't make for a very entertaining video. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we are up to, and get my pages up here. We are up to Aloluptwam, Uncovetousness. This is one of the cases where the Sanskrit's easier to pronounce than the English is. To covet or covetousness we've got, and we're of course not doing that, is what we're going to be discussing as a godly quality. Now, one can't hear the word covet and not think of the 10 Commandments, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I would like to take this one in the way that we've generally been taking the other words in each of the words in these verses, which is to take a look at the Sanskrit, take a look at the English translations, take a look at the roots and see where they go to. So with that in mind, let's start. We have Aloluptwam, and of course we've said on quite a number of these words, ahimsa, abhayam, that the refers to not. In this case, we've also kind of discovered it's not just a simple negation, but really not possessed of what comes after it. In this case, covetousness. I'm going to have to get a little card and hold it up every time I want to say that word. So with that, we're left with Loluptwam. Now, I had to take a look because, as I said, it was a few months ago that I kind of did all the work to come up with the notes and the definitions, so that right now I can just kind of read through them as needed. And I know why I don't have the in front of it, because we kind of by this point know what's going on. But the word is Aloluptwam, and when I look at my first definition, or the first part of the word that we're going to look at, I'm looking at Lolupa, and I said to myself, well, what happened to the twam in there? And the short version of the story is that, when we take these words apart, we're looking at them almost as if we're looking at a verb standing alone. So to walk, to run, to jump, to hop. And that's kind of the case here. aloluptuam, again taking away the a, leaves us with loluptuam. And when I looked up tuam, it turns out that it's, I don't understand it in Sanskrit, I don't understand it in English, but there's all these kind of second person plural of the first part and the second part. And anyway, the short version is tuam, I believe refers to the second person plural. For all you English majors and people not to diagram a sentence or what have you, I leave you to it. It's not important for the discussion here. What we're concentrating on is the word lolupa, okay? And lolupa, or lolupa, excuse me, is translated as follows. Very destructive, destroying, very desirous or eager, or covetous, ardently longing for, eager, desire, appetite, longing for. And give you a couple of words after that, but we're still back to eager desire or longing for, greediness, cupidity, lust. And that's our opening definition. So we've got a real, kind of a real desire going here, okay? Now, the root given, right in the first definition, is loop, okay? And that, oddly enough, is loop, short loop, okay? And that definition is given as to break, violate, hurt, injure, spoil, to seize, fall or pounce upon, to rob, plunder, steal, to cheat, said of a merchant, to take away, suppress, waste, cause to disappear, and a few other words. Okay? Doesn't sound like the kind of thing I would like to have happening to me. Now, loop also says compare that with the root roop. Okay? And so we're going to do that because that's what's here in the notes. And it says the roop as a root is to suffer violent or racking pain in the abdomen, to violate, confound, disturb, to cause acute or violent pain, to break off. Now, when you're looking these things up in the Sanskrit dictionary, one of the things you have to do is kind of take a look at the word you've got and as it will work backwards a bit to see what else is in the area. That one is that's kind of helps you find the roots of them, and two, to see related words. And what was given with lolupa is loluba, B-H-A. Now, that also has some of the same definition, very desirous, eagerly longing for or greedy after. And it says, of course, compare that with lolupa, which we just read. So all of these various definitions are kind of pointing around to each other. Not all of them are what we would consider the definition of to covet, but they're certainly in there, okay? And finally, loluba has as its root lube, and that's L-U-B-H, not like take your car in for lube and oil, okay? And that is to be perplexed or disturbed, become disordered, go astray, and then we find ourselves back into desire greatly or eagerly, long for, be interested in, to entice, allure, confound, bewilder, perplex, derange, to cause to desire for, and all those words again, don't need to. So I think just in this short reading of the words that are kind of pointing that they're all in the same family and the roots in the same family, we certainly get this whole kind of desiring, longing, ardent longing, very desirous. We're not talking about gee, that'd be nice to have. We're going a little bit further with this. This is, it's kind of got a very, very, very active quality to it, that something has caught your attention, and through meeting in whatever's in your mind and heart, it's kind of hooked you. Okay, you got hooked. You know, you were the fish. It's a great Zen story in there about, you know, when is the fish caught? Well, when it opens its mouth, it's all over. Okay, the hook is the next thing. And part of that is, of course, we see many, many, many objects all over the place. And again, I referred to it in the last video, and certainly in this one, it's needed to be repeated again. The story of the king giving away their kingdom and nobody made it because they just got distracted and just I like allure. I like everything that they passed by was so alluring. And I it just so happened that I'm doing this on a Sunday evening, and kind of the family tradition is we all go out on a Sunday afternoon to the local Italian place, and that's what we do. And as I was leaving, my father, who is, God bless, as they say, at 85, still going strong, he had been saying, well, I think I want to take a trip somewhere. And so we happened to have, left the restaurant. It's a very nice neighborhood that it's in. And what comes down the street but a really, really beautiful, I would almost say candy red Corvette. And we're walking out there, and I said, well, Dad, I said, if you're going to take a trip across country, that's the car you take it in, okay? You've got this, car that kind of turns heads. Now, I have nothing against it. If somebody gave it to me, I'm not even sure I would want it. They tend, unfortunately, because people do in fact long for them and desire them, they tend to be high on the stolen list. And that's, again, as we were talking about, I think it was in the previous video, because we're all so weak. Okay, we literally have almost zero control over everything that comes by. And so the continued practice, and I read you also what I think will be the next series, this whole thing about the senses not under control, grabbing and reaching for everything. Well, that's, that was also a perfect lead-in to this problem of coveting everything, of longing for it, of desiring it, of wanting it. Because what happens with that desire, as we've seen, there's a couple of things that happen with it. One, it leads you down to that path where you become obsessed with the item. Again, just like, you're going to say, well, yeah, you've talked about this car like 3 times. You must be obsessed with it. But it's a good example, because a beautiful red Corvette, it's got to be probably on most guys' list of a fantastic car, okay? But pick something else. If you don't like the Corvette, it could be something else. But, there is nothing wrong with admiring the beauty of a car or a building or anything around. And yes, for humans, we love our males and females, whichever combination of that works. People spend a great deal of time keeping their body in tip-top shape and looking great, and fine thing. And as I've been kind of re-looking at these videos, I really need to emphasize that there's nothing wrong with any of the things in the creation. You want to golf, you want to fish, you want to buy fancy cars, keep a wine collection. I could stay here for the next 10 hours and list all of the great things that are there in creation for us to have, to do, to partake of. The problem is, this is, again, why do we start with a break? The problem is, without some little bit of a break, that running of, gee, isn't that a great, I'll say golf club, because I don't want to go with that. Isn't that a great golf club, right? And you start to keep running it over and over and over in your mind. And as we said, the desire leading to loss of memory and what have you, because really, what runs in your mind is just that sound of got to get this car, got to get that golf club, got to get that lady, or got to get that man, or whatever the case may be. And unchecked, now notice this is kind of the, if you will, the cure, unchecked, this desire, this ardent longing for, the words here, the English words are fantastic, okay? Ardently longing for, who doesn't know that? Okay, but the godly quality is saying that we do not operate in a covetous mode. Now, that, whoa, boy, what that would do for a civilization, huh? Just think of all the people, all the worry. I'm not saying that you shouldn't put a car alarm in your car, but just think of the worry alone that would be lifted from people if they knew that, yeah, I've got to do this and that to keep it because everybody wants to steal my stuff. I think there's a song, Steal My Girl, in there too. But again, the object itself, just like we've been saying with a lot of this, you want to golf, you want to swim, you want to hike, you want to whatever, that is never the problem. The problem is not fishing. The problem is not golfing. It's not skiing. It's not collecting butterflies. It's when does that reach a point where it becomes such an obsession that it takes you away, it takes your thoughts, it, if you will, imprisons the thoughts. And I can speak from experience here. I was a little surprised to have gotten an email from one of the hobby shops a couple of days ago, and it says, your order has been processed. And I'm sitting there, okay, what order? I was like, aha. Yes, there was some item that maybe 5 or 6 years, that's probably longer ago, that I didn't buy when it first came out, the way that model trains work. See, everybody's got something. The way that model trains work nowadays is you have to pre-order and only so many are made, mainly because there's no more brick and mortar hobby shops and there's no more mom and pops running these places where they could keep years worth of inventory. So it's very portioned out. And if you don't get it when it's out, then the next thing you're doing is going to eBay and paying twice and 3 times the price for it. Okay, so why am I telling you all of this? Because whatever it is, in my case this, it's possible to get obsessed. Now, I'm not obsessed about this to the point where, I haven't done anything else. In fact, I had kind of forgotten that they had come out with a model that I was looking for. And here comes this email. I was like, oh, right. So I understand the kind of getting and the longing, and it completes the collection. Although I believe that type of thing is maybe not so prevalent now. We look at the next generation; they don't quite collect the same way that us old folks do. But whatever the case may be, it's not that there's a problem with a model train. I'm sure it'll look nice on the track and go around and choo-choo and all of that. Not really a problem. Had I, and it was every hobby show that I went to, it's in there. I got to go look and see if anybody's selling that. Now, I'm considering it relatively harmless. It's not diverted my life, but that's a really easy one. The difficulty, and I think the way that we know it, and in fact, let me switch over here. I went to print out the 10 Commandments, and depending upon somewhere between 8, 9, 10 and so is the thou shalt not covets. Okay, and I'm just looking here. It just appears that there's certain variations in how they are given, depending upon if we're talking about ancient Hebrew versus Protestant Catholic or what have you. But let's just go with what we've got. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet neighbor's wife. Thou shalt not covet the neighbor's slaves, animals, or anything else. And that we're familiar with. And in fact, I almost think, mainly because covet is not a word that we generally use every day, but I think that covet is kind of part of what we remember about the 10 Commandments. Now, I would say that of the 5 items listed here, if we were doing Family Feud, and Steve Harvey says, number 1 answer is, it's going to be the neighbor's wife, or for that matter, the neighbor's husband, boy, girl, whatever the case may be. Given human beings, given men and women, there's a natural attraction for, and again, I really don't care which direction and who, what, where, but human beings are attracted to other human beings. And if the neighbor's wife is particularly attractive, and you again are a very weak person, a weak-minded, a feeble-minded person who literally, as I say, has no strength available to them, is so weak that every single thought that comes by, I'm not going to pull my nose now, but every single thought that comes by is got you hooked. Okay, well, it doesn't take long once you're hooked about the neighbor's wife and you start thinking about, she's probably better than my wife or girlfriend or whatever your boyfriend, whatever. You start down the path, you see. Now, you can start down the path. You don't have to stay on that path. But given current conditions, with the amount of items stolen, and I'll put husbands and wives and girlfriends and boyfriends in that, with the amount of thievery alone that comes from coveting, okay, that's a pretty substantial amount of misery, all because your desire, which may not even have been a desire, may not have started that way, may have just been a thought that came through. But again, unless there is some strength of being, maybe we need to go back to purity of being and purity of heart, and maybe have another discussion there that a pure being is probably going to be stronger, just the way that a person not eating a steady diet of McDonald's and Burger King, but regularly exercising and eating the right foods, is going to be physically stronger. And I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again, we are so focused on the physical world, but remember the mental and the causal, or the world of the heart, because that's where the stuff is coming out of. So we have what might be a simple desire, a simple looking at it. They have a lot of car shows, cars from the 40s, 50s, 60s out here. I think they're all beautiful. I mean, not everyone would be to my taste. I think they're nice. I kind of appreciate what cars look like in the 50s. But I don't also have a desire to go out and steal somebody's or covet it. It just, like what we were talking about that downward spiral, really what you have to see is, where are you taking the opportunity to cut this stuff off, so that what might be, if you will, a natural desire, a natural appreciation, doesn't turn into this ardent longing. I got to just go back here to some of these. In fact, I'm just going to read these again, because now we find where kind of very destructive and destroying is, in that you're starting to destroy your sense of reason and your ability to actually act. And it kind of, goes back to, fear stopping you from acting. And here we have, as have been in other examples, these intense desires, this ardent longing, this eager desire and appetite, greediness and lust. Now, again, a lot of people are like, yeah, I'm all for lust, okay? Yeah, okay, fine. But we're not really talking about having fun in that way. We are talking about when it becomes, in a way, the chains that you're wearing. I just would send you to the beginning of A Christmas Carol, right? And Mark comes in, these chains that I've forged myself. Well, this is how we get there. So it's been kind of nice with these words, with the godly qualities. One is it gives us a chance to examine them and to see what they are and the effect that they have, whether it's when you're kind of not going down that path or when you are. But two, it really gives a beautiful illustration of what the problem is, how do we get ourselves into it, and of course, really, because and this is another the nodding, and kind of how to, and I don't know, there's Sanskrit is beautiful in a lot of ways. I'm going to say upasarga, but that's only because I can't remember another word for it. But a lot of these things that either go on the front of the word or the back, and I believe, and I have to consult with my with my professor on that one, but it turns the direction, okay? It's a beautiful thing. You put something on the front of the word and it turns the direction. Well, we already know, repentance is a turn of direction. And here we have all these words: not harming, not fearful, not coveting. And just so beautifully, so simply, a turn of direction. So, all of these you can hear, and you could say, yeah, but what can I do about it? And I think that as I've kind of gone further along in reflecting, the simple answer, of course, is, Doc, it hurts when I do that. Well, don't do that. Doc, it hurts, it pains me when I'm coveting whatever. And the simple answer is, don't do that. And I don't think I could do much more right now in this first part. We take a break for part 2. But really, if we look at these and say, yeah, just to turn around, let's see what's happening, and kind of walk out of the darkness and the misery, well, let's see what happens. Okay, that's it for the first half. I will put this on pause, as I always do. You guys get a couple of seconds, I get a few minutes, and we'll be back for part 2 very shortly. Well, welcome back to part 2 of this video, looking at the word alaluptvam, uncovetedness. And I'm going to pick up here from the book which I've mentioned before, the Zen stories. There's a bunch of papers here, so much for the paperless society. And here's one of the Zen stories that's here. A Zen student told Unman, "Brilliancy of Buddha illuminates the whole universe." Before he finished the phrase, Unman asked, "You're reciting another's poem, aren't you?" "Yes," answered the student. "You are sidetracked," said Unman. Afterward, another teacher, Shishin, asked his pupils, "At what point did that student go off the track?" Now, Muman has been, these particular stories are commented just kind of like we get with the Gita, we get a commentary. Muman's comment is, if anyone perceives Unman's particular skillfulness, he will know at what point the student was off the track, and he will be a teacher of man and devas. If not, he cannot even perceive himself. And then Muman always gives a little short poem, which is really kind of the point of this for what we're talking about. When a fish meets the fish hook, if he is too greedy, he will be caught. When he opens his mouth, his life is already lost. Now that is a bit on lots of things. We can't talk about coveting without, as we've been doing, talking about lack of control of the senses, or, kind of being attracted. We had talked about the ardent longing before. And, that kind of goes with it, that at the moment that you, and I think I've done it, the moment you go to grab for it, you're already down the path. It's left the heart, it's left the mind, it's in action. And most actions have to play themselves out. At that point, there's really nothing you can do. That's why it's always good that your heart and mind are kept in a good shape. That way, what comes out of your mouth is equally good and equally useful, and not desirous and envious and longing for what belongs to others. Now, having gotten through the first half, I kind of wanted to bring in from Christianity two other views of coveting. Certainly we have talked about the Ten Commandments, where most people know that word from. But actually it does appear in the New Testament. So I'm going to read two, hopefully short, verses here and then see, because there are two verses on coveting, and yet they approach it from a very different point of view as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so the first is we're getting from Luke chapter 12 and verse 13. And one of the company said unto him, and him being in this case Jesus, Master, speak to my brother that he divide his inheritance with me. And Jesus saith unto him, Man, who made me a judge or a divider over you? And he said unto them, Take heed and beware of covetousness. For a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth. And he spoke a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought to himself, saying, What shall I do, because I have no room where to bestow my fruits? And he said, This will I do. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God saith unto him, Thou fool, this night thy soul shall be required of thee. Then whose shall these things be which thou hast provided? So is he that layeth up treasure for himself, and is not rich toward God. And he saith unto his disciples, Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life what ye shall eat, neither for the body what ye shall put on. Now this is, that last verse is the lead-in to consider the lilies of the field. So this is a parable, one way of looking at how we think about things and having things in life. I'll come back to that because I want to read the second verse here. We are now in Mark chapter 7. And he said, 7:14. And when he had called, again the he being Jesus, called all the people unto him, he said unto them, Hearken unto me, every one of you, and understand. There is nothing from within a man that entering into him can defile him. But the things that come out of him, those are they that defile a man. If any man have ears to hear, let him hear. And when he was into the house from the people, his disciples asked him concerning this parable. And he saith unto them, as Jesus had to do a lot of times, and the disciples, by the way, are the they're us. I mean, if you you can read the Bible and you can read everything Jesus had to say, but if you want to know where we're coming from, just look at what the disciples ask. And I always imagine Jesus going, I got to put up with these guys here, but he is trying to get some information across. And the disciples, I mean, at one point I think they were trying to figure out who was going to get the best seat in heaven, which is hardly the point of what was going on. But anyway, they were also really kind of right up to the end, still not understanding what was being given to them. So on more than one occasion, Jesus has to explain to them what he's talking about in detail. So they come in, well, what you're talking about? And he says, Are ye so without understanding also? Do you not perceive that so whatever thing from within entereth into the man, it cannot defile him? But because it entereth not into his heart, but into the belly, and goeth out in the draught, purging all meats. And he said, That which cometh out of the man, that defileth the man. Now, I've repeated that phrase any number of times in these videos. One, it's good to hear kind of the context of it. And of course, we're going to get, so what has this got to do with not coveting? And he basically says, from within, out of the heart of men proceed evil thoughts, adulteries, fornications, murders, thefts, covetousness, wickedness, deceit, lasciviousness, an evil eye, blasphemy, pride, foolishness. Now, oddly enough, this list, remember, we're looking at only the first 3 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, but Krishna goes on to give the demonic qualities too, just so that you don't think that any teacher, whether it's Krishna or Jesus, is deaf, dumb, and blind to, as I've said, the real world. But Krishna goes on to give the same sort of list that Jesus is giving here. But whatever that list is, it is, as has been said, and as is just said here, it's proceeding out of a heart filled with all these things, and that's what's coming out. All these evil things come from within and defile the man. So that's 2 views on coveting, 2 really kind of different views. And let's go to the first one about this whole idea, which kind of seems reasonable. It's the basis of American business, is it? You know, your business grows and you need more room, and you know, we're out looking for a bigger place to house things. Now, I don't think that this is what's being referred to here. We're looking at, you know, this idea of, you know, soul, thou hast, you know, eat, drink, and be merry, and rest and stuff. That there's some idea that you can gather, kind of like your retirement funds, enough that I don't have to worry about things. Now, there's a couple of things to that. One, you don't know how long you have. And 2, especially given that this is the lead-in to consider the lily of the field and trusting in God, which is really what that is, there's kind of this contrast with this, you know, kind of coveting, an ardent longing and getting. It's sort of like the idea that somehow or another you can get. You can somehow or another get to a place where I don't need to do anything else because I have everything that I need. Now, of course, the other thing that comes to mind then is, you know, where are you laying up your treasures, you know? And really, no matter how wealthy you are, I don't care if you're, you know, Bill Gates or who's Elon Musk is, I think, up there, Jeff Bezos, whoever these people are with, you know, billions and billions of dollars, even they cannot partake of everything of the creation. There's always going to be a picking and choosing. Now, those people have a great store, and again, is nothing wrong with it. But this kind of perpetual state of thinking that I don't have enough, that I've got to kind of keep looking out to grab stuff, this kind of coveting everything. Or, you know, as we've talked about with the cars or whatever, something comes by and, oh, you know, I gotta have it. Well, you know, that's an exhausting state to live in. And the suggestion, at least in the Christian Bible, is you may not have to do that. Now, most of us are certainly not in that case. I got to tell you, even myself, I'm still getting the cases of water and keeping stock on toilet paper, given that this is 2020 that we're talking about here. And that may be a bit of prudence. I'm also not going out and buying like every single, you know, or I think the preppers. You know, I'm not digging out my backyard and putting in a cave and stuff like that. But, you know, in reality, you know, we talked about the abundant grace and what flows. You know, in reality, the sun shines every day, the water's available, the air is available. I mean, you can't, or I suppose you could stock up enough oxygen, nitrogen, what have you. But what's being contrasted with the first parable is this idea that you don't have to covet everything that your neighbor has, that it's okay. There's enough. Now, if there's not enough, it's not usually the grace of God that's the problem. It's your neighbor who is equally coveting, and we've done some of this in previous videos, where it's either a person or a government basically taking the water supply or taking the land from people who need it, which is just outright it's evil. It's evil. You don't steal other people's lives. I mean, it's this close to murder. Now, the second of the parables, okay, concerns, and this is again where what goes in and what comes out, and why we spend so much time on purity of heart and purity of being. What you practice, you get good at. And if you are in a constant state of desiring everything that you don't have, that's going to, you might as well, whenever I think of these things, there's a whole series of commercials running right now for smokers, and all I really think about is, when you get the news, they hold up the x-ray and there's all these little black spots in your lungs from smoking. And yeah, if somehow or another you could take an x-ray of the mind and the heart, and I don't mean the brain and the physical heart, I mean, the level of mind. We talked about universal knowledge, the level of heart, the what powers the creation. If you could somehow or another take a x-ray and hold that up to the light, you would see those same black spots. And really the only purpose, I think I said probably two purposes. One is, why am I doing this? To put another sound out there, because the sounds out there are so harsh and hateful. And hopefully if we, go, oh, by the way, people, you don't have to be, spiting and cursing and envying and hating everybody else. You get a chance for another sound. And there was, it's also the method of clearing that up. Unlike lung cancer, which means you're probably leaving this planet pretty soon, you can clear out the mind, you can clear out the heart, but you gotta want to. How's that? I think that's what it comes down to. I don't think that's anything different than what's being said here. It can be done. It just has to be a desire on your part. And if your desires still are evil, coveting, wickedness, pride, foolishness, yeah, you can have them. Creation's a wonderful thing. It gives you whatever you want. Now, I can see people rolling, I'm literally seeing people rolling on the floor laughing because people say, no, it doesn't give me what I want. Of course, what most people want is, let's see, do nothing, everybody's my servant, I get to eat, drink, and what have you. Did I mention do nothing, and as much money as I want, that way, I can go on. Not only can I covet, but I can do it, I can get it. And yeah, that's a really helpful state of being for everybody around you. But that's kind of what people, God, that's people's idea of heaven, isn't it? No enemies. They've been smited. I gave God the list of people who did all the bad things to me, and God took care of them for me, and I don't know if it's clouds, great fields, or what have you, but it is definitely I get every single thing I want. That's most people's idea of heaven. What do you say to that? What do you say to that? There's a great story. A man who had lived a good life, and as he was dying, angel came to collect him and said, well, you have lived a very good life, and as such, you actually just get a choice of where you would like to spend eternity. I was a little puzzled by that. And he says, well, okay, well, show me my two choices. The angel whisks him away, as it goes in these stories, and he takes him over these beautiful fields, trees ripe with fruits, grass growing, every sort of grain, animals, what have you. And in one valley is a long, long, long table, and at that table are seated a huge amount of people. And he says, well, she says, oh, this is hell you're looking at. The man is totally baffled. She says, well, look closer at the table. And he looks closer at the table, and everybody is this. And well, it turns out that at this table, attached to the end, let's see if I can do this here, attached to the end of their hands are 6-foot long chopsticks. Of course, they can't eat. Ah, terrible, says me. Says, well, all right. It says, well, show me heaven. And the angel continues on. And the man's looking, and it looks just like the same valley that we're in. Trees laden with fruits, grains and vegetable of every kind, animals grazing, fish in the streams. Again, most people's idea of heaven. And he says, it looks the same. She says, yes, just keep going. And again, in the next valley is a long table with people sitting at the table. And he's really puzzled because when he looks, he finds that the people all are got 6-foot chopsticks attached to their hands with all this food laid out on the table. And he said, but that's the same thing. She says, no, look. And he looked again. They were feeding each other. And everybody ate. So that's our little heaven and hell story for today. You can do it. You can just be miserable and rotten and covetousness and every single thing. There is nothing to stop you because you have free will. There is nothing to stop you from being as miserable and pain in the ass to everybody else around you as you possibly can be. But it also affects you too, because then out of your heart comes all these things. But it is possible, without the chopsticks at the end of your hand, to feed each other, to not covet, to not envy, to not desire, to not steal, to not murder, to not hate. It is also possible to do those things too. And my advice is get to it. I've had enough of people saying that that first way of me first all the time is what the real world is about. No, that's what hell is about. And if you want that, it is yours. That is always your choice. I'm going to choose the other way. And let's start feeding each other and not desiring, envying, and coveting every single thing that goes by our eyes and every single thought that comes in our head. Feed your fellow travelers. Feed each other. It will do an immense good for yourself and those around you. And for those who just enjoy hell, have fun. Well, I think we've gotten that point across. You know where I stand on those. That's probably a little bit more than reflection, yes. But, you know, as we've seen in each of these, you know, we can call them the godly qualities, but these are the qualities of a human being who is not bent, who is not warped, who is not hateful, who is not intent upon destruction, who doesn't have these things, as we've talked about, alloluptuam, not having covetousness. So, choice is yours. It's always, always your choice. Do not blame anybody else but yourself. It's your choice. Which way will you go? Well, I know where we're going. We're 22 minutes into the second half here. So I'm going to sign off with our usual, and if none of this appeals to you, there's plenty of cute cat videos out on the internet. So until next time.